Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Navigating Grout Types. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to take just a few seconds here to thank you for attending today and taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to and watch the webinar today sponsored by Bostik. Before I introduce today's speakers, I want to remind you that during the webinar, you will be muted. So please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we'll answer those questions at the end of this presentation. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on the invite to this webinar and listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented. This gives you easy access to watch and/or share all current and past programs at your convenience. All right, I'm happy to introduce today's speaker. It's the first time for her on an NTCA webinar. Michelle Eskowski is the Tile and Surface Prep Marketing Manager for Bostik's Consumer and Construction Business Unit, North America. She has 20 plus years of product management experience for numerous manufacturers that include several in the construction industry. In addition, she has a BBA and an MBA. I want to welcome you, Michelle. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everybody, and I want to thank you for taking the time out today to join us with our Navigating Our Grouts webinar. So I am going to go ahead and get us started and start a little bit with our course description. With that, it's really to help you select the right grout for the project that you are working on, and it is essential that you choose the right grout. So we're going to learn about the latest innovations of grout that provide good durability and flexibility for those long lifetimes in the places where these people are laying it down, whether it's their home or their business, as well as flexibility and stain and mold resistance, our color consistency and sustainability. While everything is also going to be quick and easy and safe to install, with no sealing ever with some of our grouts that we'll be talking about within this overall CEU. So going on to the next one, these are our main objectives. So going through this, at the end of it, you should be able to understand the features and benefits of the various grout types, including their composition as well as related ANSI standards. And I will go over in a little bit what ANSI stands for and what that means. Compare the challenges of grout types in terms of their installation, performance, cost, and the maintenance of it. And then, of course, addressing any important criteria that you need to use in selecting the proper type of grout for the project you're working on. Our agenda, we're going to start out with why is grout important? And then we're going to go through the different grout types, specifically four that we want to talk about. That's the Portland cement grout, the epoxy grout, the furon grout, and pre-mixed grouts. And then we're going to go through a list of grout specifications and questions that you should ask when you're looking at grouts for your project. So first up, why is grout important? Grout is important because it is the key aesthetic that you see at the end of the job. So when it comes to grout, there are typically a few different type of systems, especially if you're doing flooring. With that, there is the flooring system layers, and you start out with concrete and it goes all the way up to the grout. The grout is last on it, and that really helps you highlight the tiling of the floor or the walls, again, depending on if you're doing floors or walls. It really highlights that tiling that the customer or you have picked for this particular job. There are great benefits to tile and stone systems as well as the grout. So there's the design. You can have beautiful designs and you can highlight those designs with grout. As you learn in a little bit, there are some grouts that will allow you to add a little bit of sparkle with that without having to have sparkle in the tile. There's the durability. So the grout holds all the tiles in place, whether it's on the floor or on the wall in the systems they have. It is sustainable, so it contributes to sterilization and cleanliness as well as the indoor quality. So with grout, there are grouts that are made that are mold and mildew resistant, so that adds to the easy cleanliness of an item as well as the indoor quality. It has greater flexural strength as well as it has that long life cycle. So with tiling and with grouts, you have it so that it lasts a long time for the aesthetic you chose for the job. So one of the things that we're going to talk about early on, and this leans more into the sustainability portion of this, and that is our LEED certification. So LEED is really about doing green building, which leads to the environment. We want to make sure that everything is widely used in a green building rating, so it's sustainable in the environment. We're not adding any of the CEOs or anything that could harm an environment, and that's what a LEED certification does. It gives us credit requirements in order to give building materials that perform without harming the environment. So with LEED, there is, I believe it's up to LEED version 5 right now. It provides us all a framework to have a healthy and efficient building that is green for the environment. And it encompasses a lot of projects. So just to give you a rough idea, more than 185,000 projects have been done since 2023. I'm sorry, 2023. So it really tells you how using these and making sure our environment is healthy for the future is very important in the grouts. So the next step is to go through the different type of grouts we have. So there are 6 main types of grouts. There's our sanded cement grout as well as our unsanded cement grout. We do have an epoxy grout. Epoxy is going to be more of what you see in a restaurant or any type of facility that needs high stain resistance. We have an acrylic grout. We also have a cork-based urethane grout as well as a glass-based urethane grout. Excuse me. All these grouts can be used on a variety of different types of tiling, anywhere from glass tiles to porcelain to white translucent marble. You can use these grouts on anything. You just need to know which is the right one to pick. For example, you do not want to use a sanded grout on a glass tile because it could scratch. So there you would want to go to an unsanded cement grout. So we'll go through those choices a little bit more and a little bit further in the presentation. So if you remember when I first started, I mentioned ANSI. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute. And what this institute does is they're a nonprofit organization that oversees the development of standards for products and services in not only the tiling industry, but everywhere across. We are going to talk specifically about the tiling industry and some of the ANSI standards we are meeting. With that, we will refer back to ANSI standards as we go through the presentation, but just wanted to kind of give you a quick update of what ANSI is and what it means. So really is a private organization that sets the standards for products and services that are used within the industries of the world. So with grout options, oops, that skipped the slide. Oh no, it didn't. Sorry, my apologies. It went so fast, it looked like it skipped the slide. For grout options, when it comes to Portland cement, and those are the 2 cements we talked about earlier, there were a non-polymer modified and a polymer modified. And really the differences between those 2 is just the kind of strength with it that you want when it's not modified. Polymer adds a little bit more strength to the Portland cement when it is modified, and it also makes it a little bit stronger in tensile strength as well. So those are 2 standards that we often meet, which is 118.6 and 118.7. We have a modified epoxy, which meets a 118.8. Our regular epoxies, which meets a 118.3. With epoxies, again, that goes back to the chemical resistance as sustainability, as well as water cleanability of the tile and setting through the epoxy adhesive. There is a furon grout that meets a 118.5 standard, and that is really used in situations where you're going to have high heat and need high chemical resistance. And then there is the urethane grout, which meets a 118.3 standard, and that's around chemical resistance as well as cleanability of the tile and the grout as it's set. So with grout, there are some challenges that you will face in your everyday installation. It can be messy. There are long cure times depending on the type of grout you have. It can be hard to clean up. There are instances where there's inconsistent color. Color can fade. There is staining, again, depending on what grout you use, as well as cracking and effervescence. So these are some of the challenges you will see on your day-to-day installations. Grout is the tiling industry's #1 issue that you'll see. NTCA has over 30 pages in their guide that help you solve grout problems. So if you haven't taken time, definitely take a look at those 30 pages. They will help you within your process of installation as you work on the job. First up, we are going to go through Portland cement and tell you a little bit about, excuse me, what the Portland cement is and some of the features and benefits to it. So with the Portland cement, there are two types of versions. There is the sanded version, and then there's the unsanded version. With the sanded version, you're really looking at it for kind of that floor grout. And usually you're looking at a 1/8 to a 1.5 crevice that needs to be filled. It fills in those gaps as you lay down the tiling, and it cures to a durable, hard surface that is ideal for heavy traffic, especially with foot traffic and loading. It can expand and contract, but it does contract less than an unsanded grout. Ooh, excuse me. Sanded grout, it can scratch soft stones and glass tiles. So when you are looking at your project, depending on the type of tile you had, that is going to give you a little bit of a guidance if you want to sanded or unsanded grout, because you want to make sure that you are not scratching the tile. And then, of course, it is, like I said, may scratch in for those hard surface for those heavy traffic. When it comes to unsanded grout, typically you're going to use this more on the wall. It is for those narrower joints, so anything, excuse me, that is less than 1/8 of an inch up to 1/8 of an inch. It is too soft for that heavy traffic on a floor, which is actually why we recommend it more for a wall grout. And then it will not scratch that glass tiling or those soft tiles that you may use within the job. So there are some pluses and minuses to the cement grout. So some of the pluses are it's non-yellowing, it is easy to install, and it's definitely at that lowest cost. Some of the minuses to it, you're going to have the possibility of stains and mold mildew. So with this, most cementitious grouts will need sealing. There is deflection, expansion, and contraction. So as it hits the heat, it could expand or contract. And then anything with acids, enzymes, steam pressure can affect the way or the grout field and how it holds up. So with a high performance cement grout, there are a few things that are needed, which is the addition of the polymers that we talked before that are added to the formula. The higher the polymer content, the higher performing the polymer it is, so the stronger it is. There's higher level of pigments. There's more effervescence resistance to it, so it's higher than one that does not have a polymer modified content. There is higher adhesion. It does absorb less water, so it's a little different from a pure cement technology if it is polymer modified. It has a special fiber. That special fiber adds to the noxing or the trowel and pickup and crack resistance of the grout once it dries. There is a dense matrix, so it's a higher stain resistance versus a non-polymer. And we have some grouts that have a color suspension technology. And what that is that means the color kind of suspends where it is in the grout as it dries, so you don't get any of the fading or dripping down as it dries and expands and contracts, so it stays in place. So this is just, excuse me, a quick little diagram of high performance cement grout that is rapid curing. Rapid curing means it dries quickly. Usually it is open to foot traffic in just about 4 hours. And it exceeds that ANSI 118.7 standard we talked about earlier. So some of the features and benefits to having that high performance rapid curing grout, it is the most durable and user friendly because it has the best trowelability. So it glides on really easy on the tile as well as to fill the joints. It is best tooling to achieve that smooth flush joint that you want. It doesn't drag. It has a long-term stain resistance, so it allows you to be able to quickly wipe off any stains on the grout, and it won't actually stain the color of the grout that you have. It is the best at cracking and non-stain resistance because it is fiber reinforced. It has more crack resistance than a non-polymer one, and it's best for that efflorescence resistance that you want when you're having your job. So this will really help you not have as many callbacks with the furlances. So cement grout can actually be enhanced with what we call as an admixture. An admixture adds additional properties to the cement grout to give you a more consistent cure result as well as improve the performance. There are different types of additives, but the most one you're going to use is latex additive, and that allows it to bond tightly around the sand and the cement particles that are in the powder mixture itself, creating a more cohesive mass and linking of the bonding, just reducing the water absorption rate and making it stronger and more stain resistant. It also adds more flexibility, more tensile and compression strength, density, waterproofing, chemical and UV resistance. So UV resistance meaning the sun coming through, say, a window. And the color consistency and stain consistency is improved when you use an admixture. There are select admixtures that can increase the ANSI standard of a cement grout. So it can exceed an ANSI 118.6 and a 118.7 if the powder mix you currently have does not meet those standards. With cement grout, as we talked about all the pros, there are some challenges to this. So it is affected by climate and temperature, which is really high or low humidity that can really result in uneven curing or how it dries. Direct sunlight, which can help speed up the drying time, but it also may affect the final grout color. So think of grout in Florida. It can be hydrated because of the humidity without even adding water. So that can cause it to cure a little bit quicker. But grouts indoors, whether it's hot or cold, can actually take less curing time because the humidity is not there. So it's lower humidity. So these things such as air temperature, climate, humidity, direct sunlight can all affect cement grout as it is curing. So some of the challenges you may find as you're installing is you can pass the ANSI 118.7, but still fail in the field because of the fact that it has that inconsistent cure. So again, you have that with the humidity, if it cures faster or slower, depending on that. Premature dehydration, poor abrasion resistance, whether that's wet or dry. Re-emulsification, and emulsification is defined as a liquid being dispersed in small amounts and then being re-emulsified, or again being done and having that happen a second time. And then of course poor coloration, which is the whitening of a grout. So as the grout fades, it comes up to a lighter color. With grout, cement grout in particular, there are color challenges. So during installation, you can have dust and weight challenges, which means some dust in the air can affect the way the grout dries and the color of it, as well as water. Accidentally getting water in can also affect the color of the cement as it dries. After installation, you do have that risk of mold and mildew. Any cleaning, so any acidic cleaners can affect the color. If you put it on too hard or if you scrub too hard with an acidic cleaner, you can actually dull the color or remove some of the coloring. There's resealing as well as regrouting and recoloring. So if you have a grout out there and a part of it is fading, there are things out there that you can use to recolor it that can affect some of the grout challenges you see. If it's not exactly right or does not exactly dry the same, you're going to have that miscoloration on the project. Other things that could happen with grout color challenges, you do have batch runs. So when grout is produced and put in the bag, it's called a batch run. So there are potential for different shades when they're made from different batch runs. That's really due to the raw materials being natural, and what's used in one batch may be slightly different than another. You'll also have on a smaller project, mixing two different batches and having them dry could also cause an issue. But if you mix them together before you actually apply them, you do mitigate that different coloration between the two batches. So it actually takes the color pigments that are in the dry powder, and if you mix them together, it actually disperses it a little bit more evenly. So you will actually dry and have a more consistent color across if you have two different batches. With the climate, the lower the humidity, the darker the color. So just the opposite, higher humidity, the lighter the color can be. So you want to keep that in mind when you're using cement grout in a high humid or a low humid environment. Winds and drafts, again, can molt the color. So that's where we talk about the color suspension, where it holds it in one place. If that's not a part of your grout formulation, it can molt the color, as well as direct sunlight that can cause a large color variation. Just like you have anything out in the sun that causes it to fade, you can have that happen here. You also have the porosity of the tile that can affect the grout color. So the more porous the tile, the darker the color. So again, the opposite, kind of like you saw in the climate, the less porous it is, the lighter the color. Many installations can end up with a combination of both high porous and low porous. So you want to keep that in mind as you go through and make sure you are using the right amount of water in order to help mitigate that. With these challenges, water tends to be some of the main reasons on why we do run into some of those. As you can see, it is such a big challenge that I actually have a separate slide with that. So cement grout colors that have challenges due specifically to the water content. If the water is unclean, you can cause some color variation. Again, that comes with the contaminants that are in the water can affect the color. If you mix it with too little water, kind of like we said before, you get that lighter coloring, or you might have some powdering because it hasn't mixed the powder all the way through. If you clean up with too much water, so you have it installed, you're all done, and you clean up with too much water, you can wash out some of that pigment so it can become a lighter color, or you might have some low grout joints. It can cause it to have a lower strength, as well as make cleanup a little bit harder. To show you the hydration process of a cement grout, we put in this nice diagram for you. So the catalyst is the water, or again, like we said, with the liquid hydration, you can do the liquid latex. So grout in a bag cannot hydrate necessarily on its own. It has to have water or liquid latex. So when it is mixed up then with the cement, whether you use the latex or the water, a chemical reaction happens. That's the hydration process you see on the screen. And then as you notice from A to D, as you mix the liquids together, this is the cement powder kind of absorbing that water and becoming the grout that you see when you add it on. So cement does cure slowly during the hydration process, and that can be affected by many different things. But what you want to make sure is you're adding the right amount of water and liquid to make sure that the powder you have is actually bonding and going through the hydration it needs to become that grout you see. We did talk about some of the grout curing challenges we had, specifically with a malted grout. The image on your screen is an image of a grout that dried too quickly, so it does show that malted look. So that really came from a high absorption rate. You see the inconsistent color as well as you'll see the lower strength. So this is kind of an idea or a picture we wanted to show you of what a grout can look like when it's malted because of the fact that it dried too quick. So we do have some post-installation challenges. So you now have the grout up and it is cured. These are some of the challenges you're going to see as you go through and the grout is cured and you go back to revisit the job. You do need some sealers. So those sealers should be water and solvent based. They're penetrating and topical, and the sealers can darken or enhance the color of the grout. So if you do put a sealer on, it could cause the color to be a little bit darker. There is dirt and debris. As I said before, just common on the job with the air, you may get some dirt and debris that is in the tile, as well as deeper joints do tend to collect some dirt and debris. So when you're going through and you're cleaning up as you go, you want to make sure you're getting that debris out. Effervescence, so the salts within the grout do come out as they evaporate in the moisture. Seal the exterior grout using a proper waterproof membrane. That can also help to mitigate the effervescence that you will see. With cracking, there are the ability to have cracking. That's really where the grout is kind of crumbling or there's movement under the tiles. So ANSI does require a certain amount of movement in the joints to help prevent the cracking. And then of course there's the life cycle costs. So with cement, in order to keep the grout looking good and great, you want to reseal every 6 to 12 months. If you need to, if there are some places where the grout may be cracking or may have settled in a little bit, you may need to regrout. Again, you may need to recolor. That could come from the UV or from staining. The higher maintenance comes, and what I mean with that is the cost compared to other grouts. So the fact that you may have to reseal every 6 to 12 months, you may have to regrout, you may have to recolor. Those are some of the high maintenance costs that can come with a cement post-installation. As you're going through and you're at the post-installation and it's now been in your job site for a few minutes, there are some cement grout challenges that come with harsh cleaning chemicals. So with a Portland-based cement, they are highly alkaline. I think that's how I pronounce it. You verify with the grout manufacturer what the proper cleaning is. You want to make sure you're using the proper cleaning chemicals to make sure you are not weakening or staining the grout. This really helps it make it durable and long lasting. Acidic cleaners, as I stated before earlier in the presentation, can discolor grout and can damage the stone. So you want to try to stay away from acidic cleaners. You do see that in some toilet bowl cleaners, some drain cleaners, so you really want to be careful as you go through and do any flooring, any flooring tile, that you are careful not to use those type of cleaners, or if those cleaners are on there, to wipe it off quickly so it does not damage the color of the grout or the stone. That was a very quick synopsis of our Portland cement. Now we're going to go on to epoxy grout. So epoxy grout is unique and it's popular in tile because it does not use the Portland cement or have water in the mixing process. So it features pigments, epoxy resin, and silica fillers. It is less porous than our cement grout. With epoxy grouts, there are two different types. There are the 100% solid epoxy grouts. So those are usually 2 or 3 part system. And they have epoxy resins, hardeners, and fillers. A hardener may include the filler, which is why you may get a 2 or 3 part system, but the filler is in there. It just may be mixed separately or together with the hardener. The 100% solid epoxies also have better mildew, mold, and bacteria resistance, and the colors are more consistent. They can be used as a grout or mortar. And then it does meet the ANSI 118.3 requirements. With a modified epoxy, it is a three-part system of a pre-blended Portland, silica sand, epoxy resins, and hardeners. It's easy to use and is good for light commercial performance. It's higher in a physical strength, lower in absorption rate. It has limited stability with UV lighting, so the color can be a little consistent with the UV lighting, but you may experience color fading, and that's what the limited is. Haze on a modified epoxy can be difficult to remove. So as you are cleaning up after you install the grout, you may get some grout haze on the tiles. It can be difficult to remove if you have a modified epoxy versus 100% epoxy or a cementitious grout. And this does meet the 118.8 requirements we talked about earlier. With epoxy grout, it is a fast cure, so the speed of installation and the air cured fast drying on the top makes it the best grout for applications and uses of, as we said before, restaurants or kitchens where you're going to have those high stain resistance on the floor. Oops, went backwards. Sorry about that. With epoxy grout installation, it has challenges as well. It does have an irregular edge sag, so it may flow underneath. It could sag during the curing. It can be challenging to fix because the sag will shadow. It will also collect dirt. ANSI 108.6 allows for the epoxy joints to be concave form, which allows it to be easier to manage some of those slag and flow underneath that you have. With environmental, it can be harmful waste. It must be used once it is mixed, so it's not something that you can seal and reuse at a later date. It does have a higher VOC content than cement does. And VOC is volatile organic compounds, if you did not know. And then it does have an airborne particle form mixing. With health and safety, it does contain PBA, which can cause severe skin reactions because of allergies. PBA also interferes with the reproductive development of animals and is linked with heart disease and diabetes. It can damage the respiratory system. And the longer you are exposed to the PBA and the epoxy grout, the bigger your allergy can intensify. And of course, as we said with the grout installation before with haze, it could leave a haze on the grout that is very difficult to clean. With epoxy grout, there are some cost challenges to it, especially when it's compared to a cementitious grout. So with that, an epoxy grout is 4 to 5 times the material cost than a cement. It also has a higher labor cost and has a 15% cost of waste factor. That does get counteracted a little bit with the life cycle cost. So it is a little bit lower than cement grout. So you're not regrouting, recoloring, resealing. It is a better stain resistance because there's no sealer required for that. The mildew, mold, and bacteria resistance is higher in an epoxy grout versus a cementitious grout. It has high strength. The color consistency is better with an epoxy versus a cementitious grout, as well as it has less maintenance than a cement grout. Next up is the furan grout. So similar to an epoxy, a furan grout is composed of polymers made of a furfuryl alcohol, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and is extremely resistant to chemical damage. There is no water used in the system, which is a two-component system, contain a furan resin and a filler powder with an acid catalyst for it. So furan grout is usually used for heavy industrial projects. Usually you see that with the strongest grout for areas requiring heavy and frequent cleaning. It's great for food and beverage cooking or processing areas. It's high maintenance, one color option, and it's installed only by those who are definitely experienced in working with the strong chemicals. So going back to the furan resin and the excuse me, acid catalyst that's used as the filler power for it, you need to be experienced with working with those strong chemicals when you use this product. Next up is our pre-mixed acrylic grouts. So with acrylic grouts, a lot of this is used when you're worried about mildew or stain resistance. It's definitely a higher performance for you. It's water-based, so it's pre-mixed, and it offers a great color consistency with that. So pre-mixed acrylic grouts have some really great options. They're best for tiles that can be scratched. So think of anything that is included for marble or ceramic. It is water resistant. It does have some flexibility. So if it contracts or expands due to the weather, there is some flexibility in the premixed acrylic grout that allows for that movement. And it is also suitable for small joints up to 1/8 of an inch. There are characteristics to a premixed acrylic grout for installation. You need to continuously clean it during installation. That allows you to keep the grout haze off of the tile. It's fast setting in time, so you want to make sure it's installed in small batch areas. Think no more than an arm's length. It's not for grout lines that are greater than 1/2 of an inch. Not as stain resistant as epoxy grout, and it's definitely not as strong as urethane grout, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And next up is the pre-mixed urethane grout. So similar to the acrylic grout, if you are worried about mildew and stain resistance, the urethane grout is a great choice for you. The grout is a premium pre-mixed as well, so you don't have to add the water to premix it. So it goes great with color. It's great for color consistency, and you can also use it. And if you don't use the complete bucket, you can store it for later use. So it definitely gives you that flexibility to use at a later date. For premixed urethane grout, there are 2 premixed formula options. There's the traditional appearance, which is a quart base. And then there's a translucent appearance, which is a glass bead base. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more on the next slide. So with the premixed urethane grout, there are the sanded grout. So think of that as your traditional quartz grout. It's got a silica sand that's coated with a pigmented resin. So because that is pigmented, there's great stain resistance to it. So think coffee, red wine, ketchup. It's a lot easier to wipe off and it will not stain the grout. Excuse me, sorry. It is made up of 2 elements. So really that silica sand that you see that's part of this grout is made of silica and oxygen. So specifically that silica sand has more silicon dioxide, which allows it for us to be a coated pigment, and then that doesn't disperse the pigment as it's put on, as well as when it gets wet, so it's water resistant that way. With the glass grouts, that is one where we actually use recycled glass base in the formula, so that allows you to have that translucent aggregate, which allows it to have a higher reflection and clarity versus the sanded grout. So with the color quartz aggregate that we have in our premixed urethane grout, it is good for porcelain, ceramic, natural stone, as well as glass and metal. It's great for joint widths that are 1/16 to 1/2 of an inch. It can be used in residential or light commercial areas, as well as interior and exterior applications. With our premixed urethane grout, oh, did I skip it? No, that's right. With recycled glass beads, it's about 60% recycled glass. It can be used on glass, metal, stone, marble, porcelain, and ceramic tile. These are good for grout joints that are 1/16 to 1/2 of an inch. And again, very similar to the sanded one. It's used for residential and light commercial application, as well as interior and exterior use. Usually there is a range of colors. It's not as big as it is with a traditional quartz grout that's in the pre-mixed urethane. So there are 16 translucent designer colors that can be used with this. So why would you use a pre-mixed urethane grout? Well, there's 4 big options that you want to consider when you are picking this as an option. There's the design. So the traditional quartz base has an appearance or a glass bead base with light transmitted. So again, think of the traditional quartz is your kind of solid color, where the glass bead has that translucent, almost that sparkle look I talked about earlier. It is subtle, that sparkle look, so you do have to look for it. Mainly see it when you hit the sun or the light on it. It is very durable, so it has that lifetime stain resistance as well as water resistance. There's a little bit more flexibility than a cementitious or an acrylic grout. It is UV stable, and it's virtually maintenance free because of the fact that it is that pigment coated. It really helps to resist stains that happen and can be easily wiped off as it goes on. With ease of use, it is pre-mixed, so you don't have to add the water to it and mix it up. So it's not as messy as a cementitious grout. It has that built-in sealer, so you will not have to seal it afterwards. And because it is water-based, it's easier for cleanup at the end of the job. It is also eco-friendly. So with the glass bead portion of it, you do have that recycled content. So it is less dust or dust-free mixing because you are not mixing the water with the powder. It's also got minimal waste and low VOCs as well as low odor. Pre-mixed urethane grout characteristics as part of installation. It is air cured, so the top will cure first, and then it cures as it goes down to the bottom. It has a longer open time. It's earlier access to foot traffic versus epoxy. It can bond to other types of grouts. It's great for overnight grouting or if you need to regrout a job. Any joint width from 1/16 to 1/2 of an inch, and it is easy to clean. So pre-mixed urethane grout has long-term characteristics as well. So it has that true color consistency and performance, chemical and stain resistant as well as UV stable. It does have that flexibility, some movement in it, so it is crack resistant and non-shrinking more than a cementitious grout. It is antibacterial, antimicrobial, and antifungal. With the urethane grouts, you do not have to seal it ever. It does contribute to your LEED credits, so it's low VOCs, PBA free, and no silica dust. That all gives you points towards LEED. It's 8% to 60% recycled content, depending on what type you get. It has that 2-year shelf life, so again, you can reseal it and use it as a later date if you do not use up all of the grout at one time, and it is easy to clean up. Pre-mixed urethane grout has a lot of environmental benefits as well. So because it is not a powder, it will not release airborne particles. It uses a water-based urethane that produces 0 VOCs and does not contain that PBA. Wash water, so when you wash it as you go, it will not contain any epoxy, cement, or pigments that you may find in a cementitious grout. And it has that high level of crack resistance and durability, which leads to that longer life cycle we talked about earlier in the presentation. There are some green benefits to this, and again, just to reiterate with LEED, it does have several categories that it can meet, so the MR 4.1 and 4.2 recycled content. So some of the urethane grouts contain 8%, all the way up to that 60% that you see in the glass beads. The MR5 regional materials urethane grout is manufactured in the United States, so may offer any regional credits for you if you have it in a region that requires it made in USA. And the EQ 4.1 low emitting materials Some urethane grouts have nearly 0 VOCs, so that all contributes to the green benefits and to LEED product credits if you have those in your job site. So with that, with the pre-mixed urethane, there is that urethane binder, and there is a unique combination with that, and that is the mechanical performance, stain resistance, and chemical resistance because of that urethane binder. It allows you to have a high performance resin system as they bond together to get these benefits that you see on the screen. So the mechanical performance, the stain resistance, and the water and chemical resistance really comes from the strong binding of the molecules in that urethane binder. So with pre-mixed urethane grout, we do talk about strength, flexibility, and adhesion. So there is that balance between the tensile strength, the flexibility, and the elasticity of it, as well as the adhesion. So it is semi-flexible. There's low shrinkage, which leads to that high crack resistance we've been talking about throughout the presentation. And these balance properties are really ideal for applications in industries such as the automotive industry, where you see the setting of the motorcycle as in this picture on the floor. So that was a quick go through of the different types of grout and what the features and benefits are with them. So when it comes to your job site specific, there are some questions we would like you to ask as you're going through and selecting your grout. So with that, you do want to ask, is the grout for a floor or wall tiling system? What kind of tile are you installing? How wide are the grout joints? Do you need a flexible grout that has low sinkerage so that it's resistant to the cracking? Do you need a grout that's waterproof or stain, chemical, or mold resistant? Do you need a grout that's color consistent? Is the tiling system used for sustainable credits to the building? Is it part of a green building? You also want to ask yourself, do you need a grout that's easy to install? Would you need a pre-mixed grout versus a cementitious grout? Do you need a grout that's easy to clean during and post installation? As well as you need a grout that does not require sealing. And then the fun part, as I like to say when it comes to your job site, is what color grout do you want? And do you want a grout that has glass particles that add a reflective design element to it? So it's really about what the customer wants in the aesthetic of the job that you have. So with all of that, that is actually the end of the presentation for navigating grout types. Just want to give a quick point out that if you want any more knowledge on grouts or anything else, you can go to our Bostic Academy and look at the classes that are available there.
Michelle, that was really a great presentation. I just want to clarify one thing. When you started on premixed grout, you said grout joints up to 1/8 inch. I think you mean as small as 1/8 inch, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I was pretty sure of that. I just wanted to be clear. I'm weird with words, so not a problem at all. We have one question here that came up. It came up early, and the question was, why do high performance polymer modified grouts have higher efflorescence resistance?
So that really comes from the bonding of the polymer modified when it's in there. So as they are bonded, it actually prevents them from almost kind of breaking up, or when water comes in contact with them. What happens with efflorescence is it's really the water that comes out of the grout, and you're starting to see the molecules kind of break up and the salt come through. The polymer is actually of a fiber that bonds more directly, which prevents it from breaking down and having that salt be released.
That's a great answer. I didn't even know the answer to that one. Good job. So, Michelle, the thoroughness that you went through and the great presentation you had definitely leads to less questions because you answered just about everything as we go through here. But I want everyone to know that tomorrow you'll get an email from me just thanking you for attending. If you have any more questions you think about in the next day or so, please, just respond to my email, and I'll make sure Michelle and I get back to you and we have an answer for your questions. Michelle, we did get another one right now that just came in. And the question is it safe to use bleach or highly alkaline cleaners on cement-based grout?
We would recommend that you do not, because of the acid or bleach. It can actually break down the grout and the grout color itself. So you want to try to stay away from one that's really strong in that to prevent that from happening. In some cases, you can use, if you know, a soft scrub with bleach. That bleach content is much, much lower. So you could use that, but you do run the risk of still discoloring the grout. So our recommendation is, if you do think you need to use bleach, try it out in a little nondescript portion of it to see how it reacts to the bleach. And if you're satisfied with it, you can use it. But we would recommend not, because that bleach can actually break down some of the molecules and the color within the grout.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of compliments for a great presentation, Michelle. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of our attendees for being here today. July was a big month for webinars for NTCA. We had just about one a month through the whole month. Starting in August, we're going to get back to just 2 a month, one every other week, with the first one being August 12th. The invite will be coming soon. Michelle, I want to thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a great weekend and enjoy. Summer's going fast, so enjoy it as we go. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.